Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, feminist and literary perspective. My name is Joel and joining me as always is my somnambulist co-host
Brian. Hi. I don't walk in my sleep.
We've been quite like dream active, I think, the last few days.
I did have a dream last night. I didn't tell you what it was about, okay? It was basically I accidentally rescued 8 dogs and 8 cats, and I had to get them all to the vet to get them neutered. Sure. Because, you know, I'm a responsible pet owner.
Yeah, even in your dreams.
Of course. And it was really funny because, like, the dogs, whatever my dream...
You're Brian.
My dream brain said was basically just like, oh, these dogs, they're just getting more and more vulnerable. So every time I found another dog around the house, it got smaller and smaller. And the last one was like the size of my like little finger nail.
Yeah.
And I picked it up and I was like, oh, poor little doggy. And I was like, don't worry, you're going to get neutered too. And then the vet was like, oh, take care of that dog. He's very small.
Yeah.
And the cats, every time I picked them up, kept like, I kept picking up their bellies and they kept trying to run away in midair. And I was like, stupid cats.
I absolutely think the last week or so, a couple of weeks, we've been having more dreams or more sleep active. And I did, like, the other day I woke up and you said I was shouting. I told you it was because in the dream I was having, there was like some weird faceless man in a box that I was trying to kill using a magic spell. And I was like, Brian, I need you. This is very important. I need you to tell me the magic words now to kill this box man. And you were like, ha ha ha, here's some other funny things you can say. I was like, Brian, this is very hilarious, but I need you to just be less yourself for like 5 seconds.
Can I give you the Buffy on summary for this episode, which is Doppelgangland?
Yeah, season 3, episode 16, Doppelgangland.
Yeah. It was written and directed by Joss Whedon. So, warned by Faith of Willow's hacking skills, the mayor decides to kill her. Willow is tricked by Anya into helping retrieve Anyanka's necklace. Willow wrecks the spell. Vamp Willow is brought to Sunnydale. She beats up the mayor's assassins who attack the Bronze, where she kills Sandy. She tries to seduce Willow, who overpowers her. They impersonate each other, confusingly. Vamp Willow is sent back and staked. That was incredibly useless.
Yeah, our old friend Sandy, who makes her way into the summary there.
Yeah. So, and it was also first aired on February the 23rd, 1999. Very nicely, okay. So I was thinking about it, I was like, this is such a coincidence. So this is the 50th episode of Buffy, and it's also the 50th episode of our podcast. And I was sitting there reading that information online, and I was like, what are the chances? I was like, oh, fuck, what's wrong with me?
That's how Max works.
Anyway, yeah. So yeah, 50 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer watched this year, which is pretty 50 episodes of podcast recorded this year.
Well spent, yeah.
And it's our last episode of the year.
So,
you know, we're looking at a solid 50 episodes per year rate, which is cool. But yeah, Joel, we both have a cup of coffee, so do you want to clink?
Clink. Let's come around and go climb around the microphone.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, so well done us. And yeah, so to reiterate, well, we're not going to be releasing any further episodes of the review for the year. We're going to come back in around I think it was the second week of January, we said. We're going to give ourselves basically a 3-week break, but we will be releasing a very special episode, maybe, who knows.
I'm very excited about it.
In the new year. So that should be good fun. So our bronze banter this week. Are you ready for it, Joel?
I actually am very excited about this. I'm very involved for this.
Sure. So as we've explained many, many times, I'm fucking obsessed with like year lists, decade lists, all those things. I really like them. So we put together for both of us a couple of best of the year lists. So,
which is challenging for both of us because we have
no memory,
no concept of time, and terrible taste. But we'll do our best. So, Brian, what category do you want to start with?
Cool. Do you want to start with album? Get that over quickly.
Sure. Yeah. Put me out of my misery.
Yeah.
Well, I say mine first as like a palate cleanser, and then you can actually talk about music for a bit.
Please do.
So, in trying to remember or trying to figure out what my favorite album of the year was, I looked at a couple of top 50 albums of the year list and realized I listened to almost none of them because I am not in such a way musically inclined. But one thing that did come out this year, which I did enjoy a lot, which is very legitimate, I think, is The Centre Won't Hold by Sleater-Kinney, which just for whatever reason is a shortcut to me understanding music, and it's just very, messy and angry and political and, just a real kind of like emotional friction to it, and it helps me run faster when I'm on the treadmill. So I really enjoyed The Centre Won't Hold by Sleater-Kinney.
Yeah, and you've no other ones to discuss there, or?
Like, I could talk about things I've listened to this year. I found out a lot about chiptunes, which is like music made in the style of like old SNES games. I listened to some new Broadway musicals, but come on, we're in the music section. I brought a perfectly legitimate album. Go ahead, Brian.
Cool. Okay. One of the things I wanted to mention that I keep forgetting to is I quite liked the Jenny Lewis album this year, which was On the Line. It wasn't incredible. It wasn't as good as The Voyager, which was her album from 2015 or 16 with that great song, One of the Guys, which had the music video with Kirsten Stewart and Brie Larson, and it was great. But I just thought that just occurred to me as an also ran. So my also rans are actually super, super female this year, which is great. Love it. Billie Eilish, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? I think that album was like weirdly slept on as an album. People really loved the singles. She's a stunning musician. She's 17 fucking years old, which is terrifying. But she writes with her brother, and they come up with great just soundscapes, great tunes. And I ended up humming most songs off her album at some point while walking around. Bon Iver's I. I mean, I love a good Bon Iver album that was warm and in the snow and fuzzy, nice, noisy vocal stew, and it's just a classic Bon Iver kind of shtick. I really liked, this is the first time I've ever really liked Lana Del Rey was this year. Norman fucking Rockwell was a really, really good album.
I think she has really evolved her sound.
Yeah, she has. I mean, she kind of embraced her approach of being like not being a kind of teddy girl kind of thing, and more more settled into the thing that she's always been good at, which is just being kind of a poet.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's really poetic lyricism to her. FKA Twigs Magdalene album, I didn't like FKA Twigs before this year at all. Did not like her first album. I found it too breathy and too vocal focused and absolutely nothing else. But Magdalene this year I actually found to be really fucking good. I listened to it walking around the town one day, and it was really cold, and it really just clicked with me. But my favorite album of the year is Big Thief, Two Hands, which is not the one that everyone picked for their best year this year. Which was UFOF, because Big Thief released 2 albums this year. But yeah, Big Two Hands. I don't know. I just thought it was amazing, and not on that album. That song, just incredible.
Yeah, it's actually it's a really nice experience I had as well, because we went to see a Big Thief concert. That was this year, wasn't it?
Sure was. Actually, the Pedro the Lion album that came out this year, that was pretty good. Go on.
Just that it can be really nice coming on to these things, and usually I'm fairly aware of various things that are happening culturally. I think music, as I said, just not a thing that is very obvious for me. And I go to something like Big Thief, and I'm like, oh wow! I was like, I feel like turning to you in the concert. It's like, have you heard of these guys before? And you're like, yes, I have. I was like, oh, actually, I really enjoyed it.
Oh, one that was a real contender for me that I forgot to mention. Todd Snyder, Cash Cabin Sessions Volume 3. I just love Todd Snyder. He's this weird kind of country musician from the US, and he just tends to be really, really good. And he's just very smart and nice. Anyway, our next section, films.
Ooh, lots of good films this year.
A good few very good films this year.
Okay, so I'm just going to say one for both of us, I think, just to get it out of the way.
Sure. In
terms of obviously amazing film we talked about before, Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, of course.
We actually rewatched it recently, and everyone likes superheroes and everyone likes blockbusters and all that, but it's
a well-made
it's a well-made film. It's a tremendously not serious film in some ways. As we said before, the problem and where DC got bogged down was trying to make things too serious and too gritty. Marvel kept that color, and Endgame is a fun, enjoyable. The 3 hours go by at a reasonable pace, and it's just a tremendous cultural achievement. So I think even though it's so obvious to say Endgame, I think we have to say Endgame was actually one of the films of the year.
I'd agree, for sure. So I have a good few entries into this. One that when I was just doing a bit of research here, I was like, Us. Nearly forgot Us.
Yeah.
Us was so good. But along that line, also, of course, Midsommar. Not my film of the year, but not too far off, Yeah,
so on those points, I think Us was incredible. I think we've cooled on it slightly in retrospect, but I think it was a great experience. Midsommar is an entry in something which is actually very underappreciated in horror, which is folk horror, which is your Wickermans and so on. And it's also a horror film that takes place entirely in bright sunlight. So I think both those elements are just really captivating.
No doubt. A couple of movies that we haven't gotten a chance to talk about on this podcast, which is why I'm highlighting them now, are The Farewell and Knives Out. We watched The Farewell, I think, last weekend. It's the movie with Awkwafina, directed by director whose name I cannot remember, but who is going out with the guy who directed Moonlight and
Yes.
If Beale Street Could Talk, but I can't remember his name. Barry something, I think. Anyway, so directing Power Couple, but The Farewell, stunning movie, set in China. Thoroughly recommended if you want to watch something and have a little bit of a cry, to be honest. And
yes, it's basically about a Chinese, a Chinese woman who goes back to her Chinese family because the grandmother is dying, and the Chinese collectivism is that you don't tell her she's dying because we carry the emotional burden. That's essentially it.
Yeah, exactly. Cancer doesn't kill people.
Fear does.
Yeah. Essentially.
And the question around why is it considered a foreign language film when it's about an American to some degree, is one of the things that's kind of come up a lot about it.
It's really cool. And Awkwafina is just a great actor. Knives Out we saw on Wednesday of last week was so good. Chris Evans is gorgeous throughout, and it's like hugely well written. Ryan Johnson pulling it out of the park, hitting it out of the park yet again. Really reminded me of Brick, obviously, because that's his other detective mystery movie. Really good.
It's a classic Clue style murder mystery, big house.
Incredible cast.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how you can reclamate old genres with them being inclusive and with it being modern. It doesn't have to, like one of the
you just don't have to be racist while making those movies anymore.
So like one of the off-site examples is a classic Agatha Christie story, which is now published as And Then There Were None, which was previously published as 10 Little Indians, and even other more offensive racial epithets. People have often cited this as kind of an example of how you have to bring a bit of this cultural inappropriateness and cultural offensive terminology with a genre, and something like Knives Out proves that's completely utter bullshit. That you can absolutely do something which has been sanitized of those unsavory aspects and those unsavory points of view.
We're just like smartened up,
Yeah.
People are updated. Like, people know better these days. Well, they should have known better then, but they definitely know better now. But yeah,
I think it's a real fallacy to be like, well, we didn't know about this at the time, or it was of the time, because it definitely was of the time, but it was wrong then. People knew it was wrong then. It's just people who know better now have more of a voice. But something like this that can take something which is so cozy and so classic and just do it in a way that's fresh, I have so much time for it.
Oh yeah, me too. I would watch 5 of those movies if they come out this year. So, but for me, I actually have a tie for my 2 big movies of the year. So one of them is a movie we watched last night, which was Marriage Story, the new Noah Baumbach movie, who also directed Frances Ha. I would have known him from The Squid and the Whale in about 2005. He directed...
something else I've seen
When We Were Young, we watched together. And he directed the Meyerowitz Stories, which was a really good movie that was released in 2017, directed Netflix as well. But it's become an instant meme. Scarlett Johansson's in it, so that kind of, and Adam Driver, 2 of the biggest memed.
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. So, but stunningly made movie, incredible music done by Randy Newman, great performances. Laura Dern's in it. What more could you ask for? And the other movie I chose was Parasite, which I think we talked about on the podcast, but it's just so fucking good. Ugh. Yeah, such an incredible movie.
I'm going to jump on that because my film was also Parasite. Which was just fascinating because it was a film I put on not knowing what we were about to watch. They'd think it was about a big parasite. They'd think it was a kaiju monster film.
Well, he has made kaiju monster movies.
Exactly, yeah. So I was expecting there are some bits early in the film where people are kind of getting sick and it's kind of a bit dirty and there's like cockroaches and stuff around. It's like, this is going a place, and it just went somewhere wildly different. It was exceptional. I think we might have talked about this when we saw it at the time, but a film that is made so steeped in a culture that's different from my own that can make me feel so immediately access to it, I think is a real achievement. It really bridges that gap to see people as people in this very different circumstance, but it's exceptionally a film of this time.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's funny, I don't think you ever realize you're living in history until you're about halfway through it, but we are in a very specific, obviously, period in history.
It was so fun to watch that movie because it was just like, when you go into those movies where you're like, oh, it's supposed to be so good, like you're kind of expecting something so austere and so difficult and so weighty, and Parasite is a fucking joy to watch. It is funny, light,
terrifying,
intense, terrifying. It is just every note they play in it,
it's very
to great effect. It's really good.
So other than Parasite, my other honorable mention, which I'll bring to the table because only I will bring this to the table, John Wick 3 Parabellum. And the reason for this is similar to what I was saying about Knives Out, is that I'm certain that there are problematic elements of the John Wick franchise. And certain tropes it leans on, but by and large, it takes something which people enjoy that genre. People enjoy the one man army. People enjoy the action hero. People enjoy the kind of the drippy pulpiness of it, and I think it does rehabilitate it in a way which is by and large fresh. It's fairly inclusive in terms of that there's often quite strong roles for women in it. There's a complete minimization of any kind of misogyny or any kind of sexism that I can think of.
It tends to take place in other countries and not have aggressive racism, to be honest.
Racism, exactly. And it's also just quite a colourful balletic film. You have basically Keanu Reeves is originally trained in a ballet company, so speaking against this, where it doesn't have to be offensive, it doesn't have to be sadistically gory, and also it can be light and colourful and energetic, and I just think it's such a romp, and it's created this complete John Wick universe, and I just love the fact when people take it. When people take a risk to create a new property rather than going back to something that's already existed, I just have a lot of time for that. So John Wick 3, Parabellum.
Plus, John Wick has a connection with Buffy because your man who played the spiky boy in Homecoming was
the director.
Yeah. Okay. Games. So a couple of honorable mentions. I didn't play a huge amount of new games this year. I played a good few older games, but my honorable mentions will go to Untitled Goose Game. We talked about that. Slay the Spire, really interesting deck building game / roguelike. I played it quite a bit in early access. Really liked it when it came out this year. Fallen Order, just finished that last weekend. Really good fun. Total jank fest. Really, really shitty made game, but it's a lot of fun anyway. Resident Evil 2 I had so much fun with. We played that together and I really clicked with it, to be honest. But my definite 100% favorite game of the year is Sekiro.
Is that the one where Shago's die? How many times is it?
I died at least 20 times.
Shago's die at least 20 times.
Yeah. Except until I found out halfway through the game you can just avoid dying if you're smart about it. But yeah, no, I loved it. It was really good. I can't wait for the new FromSoft game this year, which should be Elden Ring.
I actually completely forgot about that. With George R. R. Martin's input as well.
It is,
could be quite interesting.
So, Joe, what are your favorite games of the year?
I think all year with games, I kind of realised when I looked at this is that I actually spent a lot of this year playing things which came out last year and kind of really getting into them. I mean,
Red Dead 2 you played, but that was released in December 2018. So
Red Dead Redemption 2. I played a lot of Hollow Knight crossing over Christmas into New Year's, which came out in 2017 originally on PC.
I remember.
And loved it. I actually, there's an argument whether Hollow Knight is a better game than Dark Souls. I wouldn't necessarily push it that far, but I think
it'd be a wrong argument.
The achievement with Hollow Knight is it's a game built for people like me. But the game that from this year, which kind of within the 12 months which I brought to the table, was also Resident Evil 2.
Oh, really?
Because I think...
But Joe, you didn't play that?
No, but we played it together, and I actually think that's I actually really have to stand for that experience, in the sense that stand with a D. Because one thing we have lost in gaming is the concept of kind of the local couch co-op, the shared experience, without being so retrovistic about it. I think I've no problem with the connectivity culture, but that thing of sitting down together and playing a game, and it being something kind of from my childhood and my back catalogue, not something that's as much for you, but kind of is as well. It was just it was stardust of an experience, and also
it really reminded me of watching my brother play Final Fantasy VII back in the day, which, by the way, remake coming out 2020 finally, so it's only part one of the remake. I'm very excited,
which people are very excited about, and I just think it took something which is outdated now massively, and redid it in a way which was very engaging while keeping all of the essential parts of the game. I think it was a real achievement, and Resident Evil 3 is coming out now because obviously it did very well. So Resident Evil 2,
great. Okay, TV. Let's blast through this because we are running long for this
Christmas
segment.
Christmas bumper episode.
Yeah, Christmas bumper episode. Okay, cool. Have to mention a couple of things here. Better Things. I don't think anyone really acknowledged how good Better Things was this year, but it was so good. I love Better Things. I think it's incredible. I think it hasn't had a bum note yet. Russian Doll. Really love that. Really stunning, interesting format. All that Greek mythical influence that I love. Awesome stuff. Barry. We got into Barry in a big way this year. Barry season 2 was just so good. Toucan Birdie, loved it. Exploring actual genuine trauma and grief through those characters in such compact settings, and it's an unfortunate cancellation. Pose was pretty good this year, but not as good as last year, I would say. You're the Worst finale. But my number one, and I'm not mentioning the thing that I think is your number one, is Watchmen.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go watch Watchmen. Even though we have one episode yet to go, it has been a transcendent experience for me. I've just loved it.
Yeah, it's funny because when we started watching Watchmen with Star Trek, and kind of mentioned on the podcast, we're a little cautious on it. Maybe
we were cautious.
It's been exceptional. It's been an exceptional. It's actually met you and I in the middle, in the sense that it actually does a tremendous amount of world building without being about that.
Yeah,
and it's taking a classic property, and again, my old kind of hobby horse here, but it's reinventing it in a way that's actually meaningful.
Yeah. What's your TV show of the year, Joel?
You can tell me if you're right.
Fleabag?
It is Fleabag.
Yeah, so good.
What can I say about Fleabag that people haven't already said? It took something which was complete and many people consider it to be flawless or without criticism, and actually elevated it. It's searingly hilarious. It's impeccably done. The performances are on point. It is achingly sad in parts. I wept constantly. I sat with about 2 feet in front of the TV watching it and needing to watch it. And just Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Andrew Scott's performances are unmatched in this kind of property, and it is complete and it's finished, and it's things need to end sometimes, and that's a fully complete vision that was realised, and people will come back to that in years to come. I'm absolutely certain.
The final shot of that TV show is something that haunts me.
Yeah.
Okay. Doppelgangland. What a lark, eh?
Very good episode, Buffy.
Oh, it's so good.
From 2019 to 1999.
Mm-hmm. 20 years ago.
20 years
it was
ago.
released. So yeah, no, it was released a good bit more than 20 years ago. The other day was the 20th anniversary actually of Hush, just during the week this week, which is interesting. Okay, so
basically the episode where Joss Whedon said, Vampire Willow from The Wish was so fun, let's contrive a reason to bring her back and have a Willow-centric episode where Alison Hagen plays opposite herself, and let's just explore that space.
Apparently to some degree that it was like a huge fan response to Vamp Willow and to Anya. So people's response to Anya is why she continues on as a character.
Which is odd because, we like Anya a lot, but I think we both know
Anya a lot.
We come to Anya. Like, she's very flat in The Wish.
She is, and in Doppelgangland. I mean, she had a little bit more of her in this episode when she was like, "You'll all tremble before me."
Yeah.
That was quite Anya-ish, and that is the note they lead on going forward. Yeah. Thankfully, because this kind of like mousy, pissed off Anya, I just don't love.
Yeah, absolutely. But this episode is, I guess, a farce.
Yes.
A mistaken identity. And what you need to do at first is you need to have your threads and you pull them tighter and tighter and tighter until it's taut and it's pitch perfect. And this episode sings in that respect, in that every scene has utility. Everyone knows where they need to be. There's no real fat in that, which can sometimes, I think some episodes recently have been like, this is kind of a little bit all over the place. And it all hangs on Alison Hannigan's performance.
Yep.
And she knocks it out of the park.
She's so good. You know what I think about it as well is like, we always go on about this as like, it's so difficult to play 2 different characters in one thing. She really does play like 3 different characters in this /4, because so when she obviously plays Vamp Willow, which is so specifically aggressively different to Willow. She plays Willow. She plays Willow playing Vamp Willow, and she plays Vamp Willow playing Willow.
Yeah.
And Vamp Willow playing Willow is just like ridiculous. It's satire level bad acting. She's like, I like books and I'm boring.
Because I'm shy.
But like, Willow playing Vamp Willow being like, I will eat you and we should eat all these people and like, we'll suck their blood because we are vampires. And could you actually go out the back? I need to check something out there for me.
My favorite thing that Willow does when she's trying to be Vamp Willow is she tries to run her fingers through some girl's hair and her hand gets stuck in her hair.
That girl looks a lot like Tara as well, which is kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. It has all the elements of a great Buffy episode. It has very much the core Scooby gang together again in a way. Even with Angel kind of in there as well in the mix. It's very tight on that. It has...
I would say that this is the most... I mean, like, Anya being there means that this is probably the most complete the Scooby Gang ever is, I would say.
Absolutely. It has a completeness of plot. It has lore building, it has tension, it has classic like people going from the library to the bronze and getting kidnapped and getting ambushed and all that kind of stuff, and it still manages to tick forward the main plot, because actually something I forgot between the start of the episode when we started talking about it now is that this is all instigated by the mayor trying to kill Willow, and that's kind of it kicks off kind of a lot of the
I would suggest that it's only I think it's a badly written in note rather than an actual advancement. I think the stuff with Faith, so in this episode we see the repercussions of Faith going to the mayor at the end of the last episode. He has taken her on, under his wing, he has set her up in an apartment. I mean, she brings it up herself, but it is quite like sugar daddy, and there's a little bit there where there is like a sexual suggestion to their relationship that isn't there with Buffy and Giles, that I find a little uncomfortable.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that there's many obviously unsavory aspects to the mayor, but I think what we see there is that she is again defaulting to this kind of
sexual response,
which is to be honest, it's not something I criticize her for. It is a response she has developed because of her experiences, but he does push back and say, look, this isn't that, I'm a family man, whatever funny way he says it, but he is kind of delineating boundaries of that he sees it as a father-daughter relationship, but she she's kind of vibrating within that a little bit. Something I remember very clearly about this apartment that she has is when he's like, somebody has a PlayStation, and you can hear him say PlayStation as if there would be no reason to say PlayStation 1. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like a PlayStation is just being invented, and she's like, oh my god, really?
I remember the first time I heard about a PlayStation when I was like 6, and someone was like, oh yeah, I tried a PlayStation tonight, and I was like, a PlayStation?
Yeah.
What is this contraption? And they were like, it plays discs, and I was like, oh, discs.
But like that kind of thing, more than anything else, really dates Buffy for me in a way. I'm like, oh, you people are from a different time. Yeah.
Imagine like going back and being like, in the future we have PlayStation 5s on the way.
PlayStation 5 is coming in 2020. Sounds like such a made up phrase.
I feel like if you're in
hell,
Jesus Christ, I think if you were in 99 and you were being told that the PlayStation 5 was to come in 2020, you'd be like, that was a bit slow, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway. So you see the repercussion of Faith going to talk to the mayor in this episode. But yeah, I would say that the only way that really influences the plot in this episode is Faith is there, and we will talk about Faith and doubles and doubling and shadows. But really the only way it affects it is that they set some henchmen to go kill Willow, which they will forget about, of course, next episode. And in doing so, Dark Willow or Vamp Willow takes these henchmen under her wing and makes them her lackeys.
And yeah, like I know you say that in terms of the episode, but I suppose what I feel is in a lesser genre TV show, they take complete breaks from their main plot, where this would actually have been instigated by some completely unrelated person who doesn't come back. And I just like appreciate that I can see Joss Whedon trying to continue the momentum of the main plot, which I just think is kind of an interesting way to kind of maintain that engagement. But yeah, like, so we have kind of further exploration of really what is the difference between Willow's personality and Vamp Willow's personality, and it's all based around this feeling Willow has of being underappreciated. And it does this like classic sitcom thing where like 4 examples of her being underappreciated by different people happen in a short space of time, to wit that like the thing that she gets annoyed at Buffy for is calling her old reliable. And she gets really annoyed at her about it and storms off, and becomes like a recurring theme through the episode.
And Buffy later on is like, this is all my fault.
Yeah,
I called her old reliable.
It's honestly not that rude. Like, I actually think there's nothing wrong with what Buffy said. But yeah, I suppose I guess examining, like Willow has quite a subtle personality development over the show, and it's really, really incremental. And she does clearly signpost herself in the earlier seasons as a very, I'm trying to think of like not a negative way of saying this, but like a very accommodating person. And even this episode with Snyder saying, okay, I want you to write an essay for this football star, he himself calls back to go fish when she did this for one of the fish team, I was going to say the swimming team. But it's something that we isn't really interrogating in the earlier seasons, and she's starting to push more and more against this, which I appreciate.
And it's interesting because the fatal flaws of the Willow character are present in this episode as well. Not in Vampire Willow so much. Vampire Willow is a twisted version of Willow's vulnerabilities, I would say. But you know, her like seeing magic as being an expression of her dissatisfaction and being willing to, you know, play with it and to exercise that out of in a reactionary way is ultimately the thing that like causes her downfall in the later seasons, is like that kind of flippancy and kind of controlling nature, and that's what happens in this episode as well. So it's interesting.
And it's weird because the thing that Willow, I think, gets addicted to, and the thing that's addicted for her is not power in the traditional sense. It's actually freedom and agency, and she is not inclined to do that in any of the traditional ways, in terms of skipping school, in terms of kind of drink or drugs or any of that kind of stuff. It is through the magic, but a lot of people get sucked into magic in this show because they want to dominate and they want to get something for themselves. She just wants to have choice, I think, is where it comes into it a lot of the time. Yeah, and so in this episode we have kind of this reversal where Vamp Willow is pulled into the Prime timeline, and we have a shot for shot recreation of her walking down Main Street, the same as Corgi did in the Wishverse. Yeah. But what she's scared and disgusted by is all the normality around, as opposed to all the vampirality.
Actually, really interesting. A woman runs up to her during this scene. I can't remember what she says to her. I think it's like, "I'm old." Yeah, something of that note. And okay, the actor who does that is Norma Michaels, and I knew her from somewhere. Do you remember that episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Night Shift?
Yeah.
Remember, there's an old woman who did loads of, like, they were like, "Oh, it can't be that old woman who did crimes."
Yeah,
that was her. But also, she was in 2 episodes of Gilmore Girls. The one I could locate in my brain as being like what she was in season 2, episode 3, I want to say, where the town Stars Hollow gets a traffic light for the first time, and they all like gather in to watch it, and they're like, and the traffic light has been set so that the oldest citizen of Stars Hollow can cross it safely. And it's that woman, and she takes like 5 minutes to cross the road, so like traffic goes crazy because you can't. It basically takes that long for the light to change. Anyway, so
like, very important question, but do you think there's a possibility that Buffy and Gilmore Girls exist in a shared universe?
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe. I've been watching. I'm nearly finished my rewatch of Gilmore Girls. I've been watching it while working, and like, maybe. I was trying to think. I think there might be a Buffy reference in Gilmore Girls. There definitely isn't anything the other way around.
Sure. Yeah.
But they're often seen as like, they're often like referred to in the same breath because they have such a similar play with language. So
yeah, because I was even watching this episode when Oz is talking about getting back from a gig out of town. He's like, "We were back late last night, sort of very." I was like, that's just a way that you learn to parse if you watch those shows, but like, it's really like non-standard.
Speaking of Oz, his line there is obviously, I think, a fan favorite, but it's great, where basically Willow's saying, "Oh, you find me boring," and he says, "I think that's what they call a radical interpretation of the text." And it's just like, yeah, it's like, you know, obviously everyone who's ever written about Buffy the Vampire Slayer has referenced that line.
Yeah, that'll be a subtitle for this podcast as well, a radical interpretation of the text. No, but it's very good. So yeah, so it's like extraordinarily timely that Vamp Willow arrives and kind of gives this counterpoint for Willow in terms of, you know, where she feels that she can push and where she can feel more authority and be taken more seriously. And basically we have this montage of Vamp Willow beating the crap out of people who have been mean to Willow or taking her, you know, less seriously in the last couple of days.
The jock gets thrown across the room in the bronze.
Yeah.
And at the end of the episode, he gives her an apple to apologize and stuff. It's very awkward.
Yeah, and he says, "I didn't know which president
Roosevelt
that I was meant to do the essay on, so I did 2. It's very funny.
Franklin and Theodore.
Yeah, very good, actually. Very good point. Yeah. But the scene in the bronze where Xander and Buffy come across Vamp Willow and see that she's being vamped, like, if you think of it out of the context of they just think the Willow's just died, it's really terrifying.
It's really upsetting. It's so upsetting, and it's that weight of, like, you know, it actually just, the characters are reacting reasonably, but it brings what is maybe, and Joss Whedon has highlighted it as one of his favorite written comedy scenes, but the scene where they are sitting in the library, Giles, Xander and Buffy, and just like none of them facing each other, all like sitting emotionally on the stairs and being like, "Willow's dead. Our friend Willow is dead." And there's a couple of like very choice lines. So at one point, Xander says,
Giles says she was the best of us.
Giles says she was the best of us, and Xander says, Xander says, much better than me, and Jaws responds, much, much better.
Yeah.
It's just such a great scene. And there's a point where, so Willow obviously comes back and they're like, what the fuck's happening here? And Xander like raises a cross to like shove it in her face and be like, stay away, vampire.
Yeah.
And she doesn't react to it. So he just looks at it and shakes it a little bit.
Like a flashlight. The
Like a
batteries run
flashlight,
out,
and it's
yeah.
just such a funny little like note.
Like Xander's gotten funnier. He genuinely, he is more likable post Zeppo. That's my new defining point for him as a character.
I mean, like, this episode is also very Zeppo-ish for,
Yes.
I mean, what Zeppo did for Xander, I think this does for Willow. And, I mean, like, if we're going to talk about viewpoint and, you know, all that stuff.
And
there's
for
definitely
indirect discourse and all that.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for the fact that, like, obviously the Zeppo does aggressively take place in from Xander's POV.
Yeah.
I think this episode kind of does from Willow's POV too, just in the sense that, you know, having an aggressive, wandering shadow self, like, doing your dirty work and, like, you know, expressing the things you can't express.
Yeah. Well, also, like, if we take, for the context of this, Vamp Willow as being Willow, we've multiple scenes that she is the only viewpoint character there from the Scoobies, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and it's funny how POV is established in these things, because the opening scene is quite funny. It's Buffy and Willow chatting about Buffy doing some psychology tests for the Watchers Council. And one of the things she says she does is the Rorschach test, which is funny. But the other thing is TATs, and I was like, I don't know what that is. But Willow's sitting there floating a pencil in broad daylight, let me just say, with some of the worst CGI I've ever seen.
I was actually going to say I thought it was pretty decent CGI for
some
what
of the
it
worst
was.
CGI I've
No,
ever seen. It was the shiniest pencil I've seen in my fucking
fine.
life. But
Dixon Ticonderoga, number 2 pencil.
yeah, sure. But one of the nice things there is that, like, while she's spinning it, I mean, she's chatting away, and whatever the last line of the cold open is, it, like, the camera focuses on Willow. And that's how it's like those little notes that you establish that the POV is from this person's perspective.
Yeah, you've entered her zone.
Yeah, the conversation's about Willow,
Yeah,
or it's
yeah.
like, you know, from her, you know, it's a funny writing, like, thing that you have, the way you establish those things.
And actually, something it does, which is very similar to Gazeppo as well, is, again, when you're seeing these conversations slightly from the outside, you're maybe a little more immunized against the melodrama of them. When Angel sees Vamp Willow and comes to tell the gang, and they already know that it's a doppelganger, he comes in, it's like, guys, I don't know how to tell you this, and like clutches his pearls. Willow's dead. You know, but it's like,
And then turns around and says, hey, Willow.
yeah, but like, when do you ever see Angel so emotional? And it's actually something that I think the Angel, the TV show, makes him a little too hard-nosed detective. Now, he still can be quite funny at times, but like, he's
never a dork in Angel.
no, because whenever he's upset in Buffy, he always looks like he's just cut an onion in half. It's like, oh my god, what's happening? Do you know?
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that a lot. And we have this whole thing with Vamp Willow and Willow, like Willow wearing the leather bodice, but also Vamp Willow having to wear the incredibly iconic fluffy pink jumper she has in this episode. Yeah.
One of the, if you ever like stuck for an example of how to explain dramatic irony, this is a great episode for it. So that scene where they are all sitting on the stairs and they're having an incredibly emo moment, which is totally justified by the context. You know, their best friends died. If that was shot differently, it wouldn't look totally accurate if they had put a little bit of a musical montage. But the fact is that the audience knows that that Willow isn't dead. She hasn't been turned into this. It's a farce. So the audience has information that the characters don't. And so that adds to the dramatic irony and the comedy and and then I think a further element of dramatic irony is maybe all of those characters knowing that there are two Willows when Angel comes along, and like, I mean, it's a twisty dramatic irony nonsense greatness.
It's absolutely, like, farce is one of these things that people really underestimate as just being light comedy, but it's difficult to write. I wouldn't sneeze at writing something as kind of intricate as this.
No, and it's one of those reasons that, like, Frasier was so good. It's because it just so consistently was able to just, like, be like, and then this happens, and then this happens, ha 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 ha. Yeah. It's just like, it takes such a genuinely lighthearted approach to the situation of errors, you know?
The structure. I was playing with structure.
Situation of errors? That was me.
Comedy of errors.
Comedy of errors and situation comedy.
You've coined a phrase. Brian. This is how it happens.
So this episode, obviously, we highlighted this last episode, but we are looking at doubles, doppelgangers. What is a doppelganger? A doppelganger, from the German, is a double of you wandering around, usually a polarized, usually evil version of you, that wanders around, and the doppelganger will often kill the original, but it's often a little less morally straightforward, but it tends to be opposites. So so obviously it's in the name. Faith, of course, being a huge doppelganger for Buffy in this episode. Buffy even says at the beginning of the episode, about Faith, different circumstances, that could be me. Mm-hmm. When they're talking about how Faith obviously failed the psychology tests for the Watchers Council, because as Willow suggests to Buffy, she's like, oh, here's how you can beat Faith. Just don't take the box that says, I'm okay with killing people.
Yeah. But like Buffy basically hits the stake in the head here with what we were talking about last week, which she's also wondering, is she capable of this and could this happen to her? And like I said last week, I feel I go back and forth on this a lot, because there is a lot of determinism here, in the sense of, or essentialism, that Buffy fundamentally couldn't do this and that's part of her makeup. And it's like, yeah, but like her makeup is also massively determined by her circumstances and her experience. And
so, I mean, two things there. One, we really see that highlighted in this episode when Willow shouts at Buffy. I was saying this to you during the episode, shouts at her during the denouement, where she's like, oh, Buffy, stop, because Buffy's about to stake Vamp Willow. Mm-hmm. And Buffy's reaction is to immediately stop.
Yeah.
So that obviously calls to mind when
echoes
when Faith killed Alan, because Buffy obviously shouts, Faith, stop.
Yeah,
and Faith didn't. Yeah. So that's one note. But for me, and I didn't see this written about anywhere, but this episode, like, surely calls to mind most of any episode is The Wish. And what do we see in The Wish was a Buffy who probably could have killed someone. Yeah. You know, who probably wouldn't have had a moral qualm about killing someone in the right circumstance. You know, as like kind of, you know, probably like a more regimented, cold version, but, you know, in different circumstances, that could be Buffy. You know, Buffy in that situation was morally, didn't have the moral objectivism, the moral rightness that Buffy in this one does. Also, I think there's something to be said about the fact that, like, there's a dichotomy at the end of the episode between Buffy wanting to stake Vamp Willow and Willow not being comfortable with it. And
I think that's the only
there was an odd objectivism split, and I'm not sure what they're trying to say there, to be honest.
That's
it was a bit messy.
That's the only part of the episode that I felt was a bit televisual, in the sense of, like, as in the end of this plot is this is what happens, rather than this is what would naturally happen. Because we have, within a very short period of time, Willow, even jokingly, when her plan starts falling apart, suggesting that the vampires kill Anya, who is human, and then saying that she's uncomfortable killing Vamp Willow, and like,
she doesn't know anything about Anya's background as being a demon either.
No, at all. And she like hugs Vamp Willow and wants to give her just a chance, a head start that she might survive on the other side. It's like, these are, as Buffy appropriately says, this is a demon. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, there's no.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because I mean, if you're looking at it from the objective moral standpoint, you know, it's the act of killing that is the problem, and the humanized version of this character, etc. But yeah, it's a bit messy. I don't think it quite makes the point it wants to. I think it's mainly just to set up for the last gag shot, which is Willow getting Vamp Willow getting brought back to the Wishverse, and immediately getting staked by Oz, as she does the first time around anyway. Yeah,
which we did establish after a little bit of digging that scene does take place in the Bronze, which does suggest that there's an enormous back area of the Bronze that's almost as big as the central area. Yeah, that's just disused. And definitively in this episode, Anya tries to order a beer in the great. Bronze. So they do sell alcohol in the Bronze.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about this to death. We talked about it a little bit in our very good episode with Slayer Fest. So, but queer stuff, lots of it here. Vamp Willow is just like going around licking ladies, grabbing her own butt.
Licking ladies' necks, which is like, that's not how gays kiss. But
yeah, and I was telling you this, that girl Sandy who she kills, that's the one who Riley lets like suck on him, and then he kills her.
Yeah, later, like, what a pull! Like, that's like, why?
so weird. But yeah, and obviously the notorious line, Willow saying, I think I might be gay. It's great. No? I think I might be a little gay.
I think I'm kind of gay.
I'm just going to leave that in. I'm not going to edit that out. I have no problem with not being able to quote things. It's fine.
No, it's perfectly normal. But like, she says, yeah, because I remember taking an abstract, the bit after that where Buffy says that your personality as a vampire is like nothing like you were where you're alive. I'm like, is this slightly no homo, just a little bit? But actually taking in context, what Willow says is, she's like so different to me. She's evil, skanky, and I think she's kind of gay. And Buffy's kind of response to that whole thing. And also, as people have pointed out, Buffy is subjective in the sense that she needs to believe that people when they're a vampire and soulless are not the person they are when they're alive or in soul, because of her whole trauma with Angel. But Angel saying, as we said before, is like, well, actually, okay,
it's great.
But no, it's
foreshadowing. It's one of the notes that we have in the platter as to what develops into Willow being queer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's important to problematize this understanding of the vampire, because the vampire is not a one-note monolithic evil thing, because that's boring. It's part of what comes with the age coming to the surface in the vampire, and this like lack of restraint is that there are some parts of the vampire which are objectively maybe more free or arguably better than the human version, in the sense of the confidence and the assurity and the
lack of anxiety.
The lack of anxiety, absolutely. There's very few anxious vampires.
Yeah, exactly. So, one last note before we move into the dusting. I wanted to say, why is Faith back here? I found that a very odd note. Like, all these characters know that she's killed someone, she's resisted arrest, she's run away, she tried to frame Buffy, and they're all like, oh, it's fine, she can just be around still.
Yeah, I did struggle with that a little bit. I think the resolution I've come to is at the end of the last episode was they tried to... They make it very clear that they thought that Faith should be dealt with within the
Scoobs.
The private justice of the Watchers Council and the Scoobies and all that kind of stuff.
Well, no, they didn't want it done within the Watchers Council of Justice.
Well, no, I'm including Wesley in this.
Okay.
And Giles, because so Wesley tries to take it very extreme, tries to extradite her and punish her in that way, and that, causes massive trouble. But they do talk about how the Watchers Council generally keeps it in-house, and they tend to give about the fact that she actually returns to the fold, so they're kind of keeping an eye on her, evaluating her, putting them through all these tests, and the aim obviously being that they currently consider her capable of rehabilitation, and that's kind of what they're working towards. She's in rehab essentially right now, but obviously we know that she's not actually buying into that. She actually is actively betraying the group to the mayor, which is like... But it's such a wild shift.
Wouldn't it have been better if she came back at the beginning of this episode and had a quick scene saying, oh, I want to try to be better, and that being her double agent, double agent kind of thing, that she's in the background being like, oh yeah, I want to come back and be better, but she's actually spying because she does give the mayor information about Willow, which she doesn't even really blink at, because basically the mayor says, I'm going to kill Willow,
and she doesn't prevent that. And there is this dissociation she has, because the mayor says, so early on in our relationship I wouldn't ask you to kill Willow yourself. And Fate with her damage is like, well, if I'm not party to it, I can kind of pretend like it isn't happening. She's just really dysfunctionally compartmentalized as a person. Yeah,
that's true. Okay, the dusting. So I've some interesting Buffy bets for you, Joel.
Hit me.
Okay, so Percy West, who is portrayed by Ethan Erickson, it's his first appearance. He continues on to season 4, because remember there's that scene in season 4 where he's talking to his girlfriend, because his girlfriend, he sees Willow at a party and he's like, oh, she's just some nerd, it's really mean. Anyway, apparently he impressed Joss Whedon in the audition, and this is how he got it, by doing a backflip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. His Wikipedia page very much reads like he wrote it himself.
Okay.
Not to be rude to Ethan Erickson.
Can I tell you very briefly that was something my old friend Bruce Campbell, something he used to do in auditions to impress people?
Please.
Is he can flip himself over on, like, smash himself onto his back, like, just on cue.
A la Fight Club kind of thing?
Yes. I don't remember that very clearly from Fight Club, but he can just do a prop.
The scene where Ed Norton, like, beats himself up?
Oh, yeah, I suppose it's kind of similar to that, yeah, but he did that for executives a lot, and they're like, oh, you can do your own stunts, that's fine.
So this is obviously the first appearance of the Hoffman, who continues on to be in up to season 7, I do believe. He is one of the 5 actors to appear in all 3 of the first Joss Whedon shows.
Oh, sure.
So he was in Angel. He's portrayed by Andy Umberger. He was in Angel. He was Dr. Donald Meltzer in I Fall to Pieces. Do you remember that episode?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He was in Firefly, but I didn't know. I didn't know the character. So, but he was also in Mad Men. He portrayed Dr. Arnold Wayne for a couple of seasons, which I haven't seen that far, I don't think. And he was in 2 different characters in West Wing at various points.
Oh, very good, yeah.
This is Joss Whedon's 5th favorite episode, which is pretty cool. And I Also have a note about just the band who's there. I actually did know them before this. Is Kay's Choices. They're not very good, I don't think, but they're reasonably popular, like 90s kind of, probably played a couple of festivals kind of band. But yeah, not great. Oh yeah, and Bored Now obviously appears in this episode. So Vamp Willow says Bored Now. And obviously that's the thing that she says just before she flays Warren in season 6.
Absolutely, yeah.
So.
A lot of iconic content in this. One thing I would note as well is that this is obviously, as we mentioned, the 50th episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And in this episode appears Angel, Cordelia, and Wesley, all of whom appear in the 50th episode of Angel.
That's cute.
Billy, which is distinctly a very... like not misogynistic in its writing, but misogynistic in its plot, as in like it deals with misogyny and aggression against women, which is just like kind of a weird counterpoint to this, like distinctly, I think, a very woman-driven episode, very much about kind of female agency and all that kind of stuff.
A bit. Fashion notes. So obviously there are 2 major fashion notes in this episode. One of which is Willow corseted, beautiful self, just looks incredible.
She has some great as well. She's like, it's very binding, but I guess vampires don't need to breathe. It's like, yeah, a lot of what vampires wear is very impractical. Yeah.
And there's such a note of like, no one ever acknowledges it, but there's such a goth 90, depressed girl like imagery there that like, so great. But obviously otherwise, Willow in this episode is very much setting herself up to fail and to be a pastiche, like fashion wise. She has taken a step back fashion wise in this episode, I would even suggest, to set up Vamp Willow being in that ridiculous clothing. But she's wearing like a fluffy jumper at the beginning of the episode with like a magic eye in the front, but that's also looks kind of like an asshole. And she's wearing a equally pink fluffy skirt at the same time, and it's just like, come on.
She looks like one of those marshmallow dealies you get at Christmas.
I also noted that Oz is wearing a orange bowling shirt that has bees on it and says
like the psychic tarot reading or something.
Elspedo?
He does wear that. He also wears a t-shirt which is all a bit like psychic palm reading and stuff.
So weird. Do you have any Buffy bits or fashion notes, Joe?
Yeah, just one Buffy bit which I thought was odd, which I thought Snyder has a picture of a young girl on his desk, which implies that he has family.
Weird.
Which is a very odd note. And otherwise, I think
it was actually a yellow bowling shirt that Oz was wearing. Sorry.
Terrible. Yeah, as you mentioned, obviously the episode introduces the Hofring, kind of fleshes out the idea of vengeance demons, which will become kind of a really solid part of the mythology going forward, and stretching into the comics. The Hofring ends up being part of the Magic Council, reforming magic after the end of magic. So yeah, that's kind of quite foundational. And yeah, I just like that. One thing I will notice, I just like when Willow punched Anya, because Willow doesn't get to hit a lot of people.
It's true. That was good. Okay. Death count. Do you have that for me, Joe?
Yeah. He lied. So in terms of death count, we have 2 vampires dusted by Buffy, again with the reoccurring, the perennial snooker Kane? Q. We have the League vampire, who was impaled by the Q as well, which his name is Alphonse, apparently.
Oh.
Vamp Willow dusted by Wish vs. Oz, or what I think might actually be a stunt man dressed as Wish vs. Oz, realistically. We also have one vampire dusted by Jaws very violently, like it was real, like, go back to hell, creature of the night. And Sandy bitten and slaughtered by Vampire Willow, which I actually think is a retcon, because
she doesn't get to feed on Willow's blood.
Yeah, and we don't see it, but also, which is fair enough, but she also makes a point that if you're not good, she's talking about taking care of them all and turning them into new vampire minions, and if you're not good, and then she drinks Sandy to indicate you'll be killed.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so we have a lot of vamp action in this episode.
No doubt. Okay, give me your rating out of 10, please.
I'm going to give this a 9.8 licked necks.
9.8 licked necks. Okay, go on.
I think it's one of the best episodes of Buffy. Because we always go for the heavy hitter episodes, but this is...
I certainly do.
This is funny. It is consistent. Everyone is given their best performance. It is packed with characters, and yet everyone gets to breathe. It expands the lore. It uses all the locations. It has callbacks and call forwards without being too continuity laden. And I laughed out loud multiple times in this episode, which I've seen several times before. I love Doppelgangland.
It's really good. I'm going to give it 9.7 Sanity Fairs out of 10.
Oh, I forgot Sanity Fair. That was such a good line.
Thanks. I wrote it. Yeah, it's just really good fun. It's really well written, very well balanced comedy. It's just the character voices are so spot on. Not a bum note in the episode. Not a problematic. Well, plenty of problematic stuff, I'm sure. I don't have a single problem with the writing, the portrayal, anything. Like, you know, put me in front of this episode and the body forever, and I'm sorted. You know.
That would be quite a 1-2 punch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great.
Are we done?
Yeah, and this is our last episode for Christmas.
Yeah. Happy Buffy year.
Happy Christmas, everyone. Thanks for listening to our podcast all year. If you did. If you didn't, then fuck you, Mom.
Happy Christmas for those of you who do Christmas.
Happy other stuff.
Yeah, as Willow says, what are you doing for Christmas? Being Jewish, remember?
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing for...
When is Hanukkah? Is it mid-December?
I do not know. I will not guess. There's a lot of stuff going on. Happy winter to everyone.
Happy solstice.
Happy solstice. Winter is very much about kind of like chilling out, hopefully being around the hearth with whatever family you call family, and thank you for giving time to be a little part of our kind of long distance podcast family. Genuinely, it's been a great year. I'm being sincere.
You're such a nerd.
I know it's so out of character for me to be sincere, but yeah, this has been a great year. I've enjoyed doing this. I hope you all have enjoyed listening, and thank you very much, Brian, for your time as well.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so we will see you in the new year.
Is it the solstice?
Yeah, the winter solstice.
Winter solstice, isn't it?
Or whatever.
Okay, cool. Yeah, grand. Okay, cool. I was looking that up to make sure. Yeah, so talk to you in the new year. Maybe we'll die in the meantime. You never know.
Well, you know, see ya. Okay, see you in the new year on the next episode of Buffy Boys.
Which is Enemies, by the way.
Anyways, yeah.
Which one's that?
The next one.
Yeah, do you remember? Wait, 1 second. I'm just going to look at that.
It's so messy. This exit is so messy.
Oh, yeah. Faith tried to seduce Angel to bring back Angelus.
One to look forward to. One to warm the cockles.
Yeah, in January. Okay. Buffy Boys. Buffy Boys. Oh, I've already done that before. Buffy Boys. Cool.
Buffy Boys. See ya.
Slán.